Welcome back for another video. It's time for the Gameweek 32 episode of the Experts as we look ahead to this Friday deadline. It's a big one this week, being a blank game week and a huge amount of free hits active among the experts, as you can imagine. This series has hundreds of managers participating who meet the criteria, some top all-time managers and content creators. If you'd like to improve your rank and get help winning your mini leagues through valuable experts data, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Starting with the latest manager highlight, and David Vos ranked 135th after scoring 65 last week, which wasn't enough for a green arrow, which goes to show just how competitive it is at the top. There's a further 5 experts inside the top 1k with him, so the competition's fierce. Special mention to FPL Harry, who's moved up to 2nd in the Experts League and he's ranked 263rd overall. So let's move on to the transfer activity, and starting with the obvious, and it's a massive 79% that've got the free hit active. As such, just 3% are rolling the transfer, 6% are making 1 transfer, 7% are making 2, and 5% are making 3. If you've still got your free hit active, the 2 best options remaining are this week or Gameweek 34. The free hit chip is a chip with a lot of utility. Using it in a blank or a double game is viable. We'll dig into the chip usage more later. There are still some experts holding on to the free hit, so if your team looks decent enough this week, particularly if you can field 11 and cover popular picks like Trent and Salah, even for a -4, then don't be afraid to follow your own path, even if it looks like it's against the herd. So those are the 2 top transfers this week, Trent and Salah. Trent being picked up by 39% of the experts off the back of a 9-pointer against Leeds from 2 assists and bonus points. If it wasn't for the Canate error, it could have been more. Salah is 2nd and he's transferred in by 35% of the experts. Surprising to see him 2nd. You need to do whatever you can to get him in this week really if you don't own him, even if it involves selling the likes of Bruno or Haaland, as long as you've got a solid plan to buy them back in 33. Jesus is the 3rd most popular transfer in. There's a long list of good mids shown here: Salah, Martinelli, Saka, Eze, Gakpo, Maddison, etc. So Jesus does take up a striker spot, which helps with the team balance. There is a quote from Arteta's presser which is worth highlighting. He was asked whether Jesus is ready to play 90 minutes and he said, "We'll see, we have been really careful. There have been some issues within that period. When he was doing the final stages of the rehab, we have to be really attentive. We have players that can change the game, that are fully fit, that deserve to play as well, and we have to be mindful of that." So it sounds like Jesus should start, but he could come off early. So you could also make the case of running with 3 Arsenal mids, perhaps in a 3-5-2. The top expert transfers this week of course include the free hit transfers, and it is Haaland who's the most sold by 23% of the experts. They'll get him and all the rest back in Gameweek 33 of course. For those not on a free hit, it's a week to be careful with transfers. If you're selling Haaland for Salah, then you need to make sure you've got a plan to get him back in 33 if need be. It's mostly those with a blank Gameweek among the most sold: Matoma, Rashford, Bruno, Chilwell, etc. Kane among the most sold, surprising, 16%. He does face Newcastle and they travel off the back of a terrible result against Bournemouth, but time and again this season he has delivered, and he's even seen a price drop this week. In fact, he's picked up more bonus points than anyone else in the game due to the sheer number of games that he's delivered in. A quick look at the chip usage, and then we've got a couple of experts free hit teams to share. So 79% have activated the free hit this week, which still leaves it as the least used chip of all of them. Again, to reiterate, if your team's in good shape this week and you've got the likes of Salah and the Arsenal players covered, then don't feel like you have to follow the experts. Some of them are clearly holding out till Gameweek 34 or perhaps even later. We caught up with a couple of managers this week who have shared their drafts and commentary behind the teams. Alistair has 3 top 10k finishes to his name. In fact, he's on a streak of 8 top 100k finishes in a row as well. Here's how his free hit team looks, and here's what he said. "It's been quite tricky deciding on a free hit draft this week, mainly because there hasn't been a huge amount of players that I like. I've had Johnston, Trent, Trippier, Salah, Saka, Martinelli, Watkins and Tony all in my drafts, so I've been rotating the other 3 spots. I started picking off my favourite 3 players from Arsenal, Jesus, Martinelli and Saka, and then Liverpool, Salah, Trent and Gakpo. However, I couldn't find a 3rd defender that I liked. I've ended up taking out Jesus because I'm happier going with Kane and White than I am with Jesus and then someone like Castagna or Moreno. It's never ideal going for a striker like Kane versus one of my defenders in Trippier, but as I've said before, I really don't like many defenders. Always a chance that both get an attack in return anyway. Only real decision left is Gakpo and White versus Ødegaard and Robertson. It's a tough decision and I'll probably make my mind up right before the deadline. Captain is an easy one, Salah all the way. The other teams from FPL Economics currently ranked 4.7k, and he's finished top 5k before and top 1k before, and he's on a run of 9 top 100k finishes in a row. Here's how his free hit team looks. He said, "So I don't trust the Arsenal defence too much with holding at the back rather than Saliba, even if it is against Saints. I'd rather bank on a big attacking performance to put a marker down after last week. Liverpool seems like a nightmare to predict the attacker's minutes besides Salah, so going for the old faithful fullbacks for some kind of return. Salah the obvious captain. Kane, Watkins and Trippier will have huge ownership now among the free hit and non-free hit teams, so they're quite boring defensive pigs. And finally, hoping Maddison puts on a show in a huge home game for Leicester and Everton continue to be blunt in attack." Thanks very much for sending in, gents. So let's move on to the experts' captaincy, and it could hardly be more one-sided this week. 96% of captain in Salah. He's top in the league for expected goal involvement over the last 6 with 5.78 XGI. Underlying numbers are looking like they're back to his best. Most Forest fans have pretty much called this game a write-off away at Anfield, and Liverpool starting to look back in form. Hard to overlook the Egyptian, but 3% have done. Maddison, Saka and Martinelli captained by one expert each. Before we look at the experts team, if this video has been useful to you, please drop it a like and make sure you subscribe to follow this content every week. So here's how the experts team looked, which is built from their highest owned players, and the team is as follows. It's a 3-4-3, very heavily weighted by all the free hit activity this week. It's actually Johnston in goal. He was the most transferred in keeper, and Ryan drops to the bench with a 10 for the experts having sold him for a tougher game against Villa. The back three is Botman, Trippier and Alexander-Arnold. In midfield is Saka, Salah captain, Martinelli and Maddison, and a front three of Watkins, Jesus and Kane. Estepinian, Shaw and Rashford remained highly owned, and they dropped to the bench this week with no fixture of course. We've excluded last game week's expert ownership normally listed on the left hand side, as there'll be no correlation with this week's team due to all the free hits active. Instead we've got an extended list of their transfers in and out. If you're on a free hit, Andreas and Totti are two perfect bench enablers to mention to help you load up your starting 11. Over the last 6 games, Andreas is actually top in the league for shots taken with 24, and he's only 4.3 mil. Totti's only 3.8 mil in defence, and he started the last 3 in a row for Wolves, playing the 90 in all games and keeping 2 clean sheets. Each game week we ask the experts to offer their insight and tips for the game week ahead. Oscar says, "Lots of people seem to be concerned going too template. Worth remembering that the free hit's a differential in itself, no need to go too different just for the sake of it." Jacob Sapwell's already used his free hit before but offers similar advice. He says, "I'm in a similar minority of experts without a free hit. I am bound to lose ground this week but hope to make it back by using my wildcard to set up an optimal team for double Gameweek 34. For those using a free hit, I think the template picks are what they are for a good reason. There is scope to go for a couple of punts, but I wouldn't try to be different just for the sake of it. There'll be plenty more chances to take risk later on." Lee Jackson says, "Back in Newcastle to bounce back versus Spurs. I think Isak's being overlooked by many." Christian says, "Free hitting this week to allow me to keep important doubles for Gameweek 34. You have to assess your squad for the future game weeks to see if the free hit's the best option for you now." Andrew says, "Never before have Crystal Palace players been so popular. All aboard the 1 week Sam Johnston train." Tom says, "As a Fulham fan, I really like Harry Wilson this week. Still not enough for a start though. Chasing the Halls with a triple Arsenal and double Liverpool attack." And lastly, FPL Poker Player says, "Free hit me baby one more time." That wraps up this video, thanks for watching. We'll be live for the deadline later, so make sure you tune in for that. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like it and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out next week. It's a tight turnaround with the Gameweek 33 deadline coming on Tuesday. See you soon for the next one.